Hey everyone, it's Steve again, Wednesday at noon, and I'm glad you're here for the midweek pick-me-up, midweek show. Now, you probably realize that this is a recording, and I'll explain why I'm doing a recording today instead of the live show, which I've pretty much done for over a year now. But what I want to talk today about is something that I hope will encourage you. Here's why, because a lot of you are probably way discouraged. Let me put it this way. Show of hands. How many of you out there are just tired of the midterm election drama and you just can't wait for next Tuesday to be over with? I get that. You know, I've had a long emotional history with thinking about politics. And a lot of times I'm reminded of what Jesus said to Peter in Matthew chapter 16 when Peter was trying to get Jesus off track, and Jesus said, "Get behind me, Satan." And that's kind of the way I feel about this subject sometimes whenever I'm kind of tempted to dive into it. Get behind me, Satan. So I want to encourage you with this today. Number one, some things to just remember about this whole realm, especially if you are a follower of Jesus. And here's the first point and things you need to know, and that's God is sovereign. God has always been sovereign. Even when we don't understand it, God is still on the throne. He always has been. He will, and he will be next Wednesday for our midweek show here after the midterm elections. And I love the way Daniel said this in Daniel chapter 2, verse 21, that God sets up kings and he deposes them. He changes seasons, winter, spring, and he sets up kings and he deposes them so that God will not be surprised. God is sovereign over the affairs of men. Now, coupled with that is this reality that he's given us a free will. Now, the connection being, if you want to vote, you can vote. If you don't want to vote, you don't have to vote. And all of the issues surrounding all of these candidates, that you have been given a free will, and you can exercise that on the things that matter to you. Now, that kind of brings us into the third thing that you need to know, and simply this, that no one candidate, no one political party is 100% spot on everything. And you have to look at their voting record, look at the things that they're passionate about, that they believe in, and also understand that they're not going to be 100% right on every single candidate. And then finally, on the things that you need to know, that ultimately it's Jesus that will change the heart. You know, we can legislate laws, whether they're liberal, conservative laws, whatever, but ultimately it's Jesus Christ that will change the heart. And we need to think about that. So these, I mean, the list can go on, but here's just a few things that you need to know. Now, what do we do? What do we do in regard to these issues? Well, number one, I want to encourage you to pray now, and then also to pray afterward. You know, pray to have wisdom, pray that God will guide us, but even afterward, especially if your candidates don't win. Paul is clear in 1 Timothy chapter 2, picking up at verses 1 through 4, that we are to pray for governors, kings, and all those in authority, ultimately that we might have peace and the gospel might go forward. And here's what you need to understand and you need to do, to pray for those even if you don't like them. And I remember discovering this a long time ago when a candidate came to a position and I didn't like this person. And I remember thinking, the only thing I can do, the only thing I can pray is that God deliver this person from the evil one. And it's interesting, that's the way Jesus ended what we call the Lord's Prayer. Deliver us from the evil one. And I remember praying, if nothing else, God, please deliver this person from the evil one. So to pray. And then number two, before you vote, do your homework. Point being, get beyond the media headline hype. In other words, the media is throwing one thing out there, what they want you to know, but do the homework, find out the ramifications, find out what people really do believe and vote for beyond who's cool and who's not cool. So do your homework. And then number three, to obey and respect. In other words, especially for a Christ follower, Paul is very, very clear in Romans chapter 13, verse 1, that we are to be subject to the governing authorities. The only exception is when the government tells us to disobey our faith or to deny Christ. But we are to be obedient. And if you don't like the candidate, vote for another one in 2 or 4 years. But to be obedient and then to show respect as well. Continuing on in Romans chapter 13, Paul said we're to give honor where honor is due and respect where respect is due. And I'm even thinking about my own life. There were a lot of issues that President Obama stood for that I did not agree with. Yet if he was in this room right now, I would address him as Mr. President. Why? Because that is his title, and I owe my respect. And then finally, maybe this: continue to keep your eyes on the big picture. The big picture about God's sovereignty. We have a free will. We're to exercise that according to our conscience, but ultimately God's moving in his way, and it's toward the hearts that we want to give our attention to. So, you know, it's coming midweek, midterm elections next Tuesday. You know, go out there and vote, vote your conscience, but think about the big picture. Think about the divine picture, ultimately to love the people who don't agree with you, to love the candidates that you may not agree with, ultimately knowing that Jesus Christ died for all of us, okay? Now, so why am I recording this? Well, it has something to do with confessions. Yes, this is a hard copy. It does not go public until November 27th, but you can go online to Lucid Books or Barnes & Noble or Amazon, and you can pre-order it today. Now, if you saw my webcast last week, you saw I did it live. I had issues, so I thought, you know, I'm going to try to record these. I'm still going to do some live episodes because they're just kind of fun and risky. But because I am recording this, I can get it onto a YouTube channel. I've never really done anything with YouTube. Robert Tippin and I had a Sunday night discussions program we did for a while where we did it there. But I'm going to start recording many of these so I can put it on YouTube, so I can put it on various mediums. Why? Because I want the message to get out that even though there are doubts, and I talk about my doubts in this, Confessions of a Pastor, Finding Hope Through One Pastor's Doubt, ultimately that despite the doubts, God is still good. Jesus is still good, and there's hope for you. So if you like these discussions, these recordings, you know, share them with other people. Follow and like the Kingdomology website, the Steve Hinton author website. Share this around, and we'll be back again next week. Be strong. We'll see you then.